Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show. There was more NFL preseason action yesterday, including the second appearance of rookie quarterback, third overall pick, Drake Maye. We actually got to see him for more than just one series. We'll talk about what we got out of him and what really was his first real action in the NFL. Then we're going to take a quick look into the MLB, talk about some injury updates. Christian Yelich going out for the rest of the season. Mookie Betts coming back. When does Yamamoto come back for the Dodgers? We'll talk about all that and more. Then we'll move into our continuing series going over every single NFL team. Today focusing on the Chargers, going over their offseason, where they had what was definitely a tough offseason for them. We'll talk about what they did as well as an offseason grade for that before giving them an overall grade for their upcoming season with a record prediction. And it is Friday, so that means that we have our official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network MLB Power Rankings to close out our show. So stick around for that. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat button. It should be right next to the chat. If you do either one of those things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw that in the chat. I will get to you as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, today we are going to start off our show today talking about Drake Maye. Drake Maye, really in his first action, he did get he did get one series in week one of the preseason. He goes 6 for 11 for 47 yards through the air, adds a rushing touchdown on the ground, as well as a fumble. When you look at those numbers, it's not overly impressive. But when you look at what he did, it was up and down. Now, that isn't anything that is going to be, crazy. But it's kind of what we expect, right? When you look at a rookie quarterback, it's going to be up and down. There's some good, there was some bad. The best play that he had out there, if you were watching, it was in the third quarter. He chucks a deep ball on a deep post, two high safeties, splits them, gets right down the middle. Great throw. Maybe it was a tiny bit overthrown, but the receiver dives, it hits his hands, and he just cannot survive the ground. That is a beautiful throw, sidesteps pressure, steps up in the pocket, and he looked really comfortable on that play. Now, that wasn't every single play. There were other plays where he didn't look very comfortable in the pocket. There were times where he would bail out of a clean pocket and get on the run, not have his feet set, overthrow receivers. He did that a bunch in this game. He did have a couple of overthrows, but he also made a bunch of athletic plays as well. So again, good with the bad with Drake Maye. Overall, when we're taking a look at this performance, it is something that you can absolutely build on. Obviously, last week when he came out and he only played one series, that was incredibly disappointing for everyone. We got to see every other rookie quarterback get a significant amount of playing time, or at least a good amount of playing time, get their bearings in the NFL, and we finally got to see that. Now, Coach Jeremy Maye for the Patriots says that there is an open quarterback competition after today, and I think that's the best way to be looking at it. Now, the favorite heading into the preseason to start for the Patriots, and I believe the favorite still, is Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is definitely still the favorite to start, but we know what we get with Jacoby Brissett, right? Jacoby Brissett is going to come in and he's not going to make those mistakes. He's going to come in and he's going to make the team play to their talent level. With the Patriots, that talent level isn't ridiculously high. He'll maybe win you a couple games, but he won't lose you a couple games. Drake Maye, on the other hand, with the flashes that he shows, has the ability clearly to win you some games. He's got that deep play mindset, that ability to throw the ball deep downfield. It was a beautiful deep ball that he's got. There's so many flashes there. Now, he still needs to develop. Don't get me wrong. But getting him some action, getting some actual playing time, it doesn't to me feel rushed. And the Patriots, I don't know what they're expecting. Seemingly they don't expect to do much because they've traded away Matthew Judon now in recent days, right? They went and traded away their best defender outside of Christian Barmore, who's dealing with those blood clots and won't be able to play indefinitely until that gets figured out. So the two best defenders, the two best pass rushers are out. They don't have too much seemingly on the defensive end, and on offense, we know the story there. It's not super promising. It's not super well it's not very optimistic over there. So if I'm the Patriots, I don't see the upside in starting Jacoby Brissett. If you were a team like, say, I don't know, the we'll throw out the Broncos, I guess. If we're a team closer to contention, and I don't think the Broncos are a good example for this. If we're a team like the Bears, if they didn't have Caleb Williams, right, a team that's closer to contention, isn't really expected to do much, but has a shot in the dark at making the playoffs. Maybe then I started Jacoby Brissett, but they have Caleb Williams, and that's a no-brainer there, right? I think the Patriots should start Drake Maye from the jump. It doesn't feel like it would be rushing, and I know it's a bad situation. It is. It's maybe the worst situation in the league outside of the Panthers, right? It's not a good spot to be in for any quarterback, let alone a rookie quarterback. But you want to get your guy some reps. You want to find out if he's the guy, and you want to be able to replace him if he isn't. Now, I'm not saying he's a one-and-done guy. Give him at least a couple seasons. But I wouldn't be shocked if we get to see Drake Maye week 1. Do I think it's going to happen? No. More likely, I think we see Drake Maye maybe a little later on in the season, somewhere around the week 8, week 9 mark ish. It's not a super easy start to the schedule there for them, but maybe targeting a week 9 start for Drake Maye against the Titans. That might be something to look at. Maybe we get to see him go up against fellow rookie quarterback in week 10, Caleb Williams, when they play the Bears. But this is a team that doesn't have a lot to play for, and getting some juice into that offense, get some energy over there. I think playing Drake Maye week 1 might be the best way to go about it. But let me know what you think. I do understand that rushing him isn't the best option always, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of real downside to starting either of them. And me personally, as someone without a stake in the Patriots, I think it'd be really exciting to see the rookie quarterback get some opportunity, at least for the rest of the preseason. And I like what Mayo said. It's still up for debate. I do want to see more, but if he continues the path, gets a little more comfortable in the pocket. Again, the offensive line is bad, so it's not like I can't believe that he wasn't comfortable in the pocket there. But if he just gets a little more comfortable, trusts his guys just a little more, he could work out really well, really quickly, I think. And I think we're starting to see, especially down the stretch in that game, we started to see a little more what we wanted out of Drake Maye. But anyway, let me know what you think of Drake Maye's performance. Anything that if you think he should be starting week 1. But we're gonna take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're gonna take a little trip into the world of baseball. There's been a bunch of major injury stories that we need to cover. Some guys coming back, some guys stepping out for the rest of the season. We'll talk about that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about Drake Maye's first real performance in his NFL action. Obviously, he did get one drive in week 1, but we got to see a lot more out of him in week 2. In this segment here, we're going to take a look at some MLB injury updates, some new stuff going around the world of baseball, including Christian Yelich had some updates surrounding him. Mookie Betts is back. We'll talk about what he's done recently, as well as other Dodger updates, including pitcher Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, leave a tip or donation through the super chat option. If you do either of those things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into some MLB updates injury-wise today, starting off with the season-ending update for Christian Yelich. Christian Yelich, who was having kind of a resurgent season. He, after winning a couple of MVPs pretty recently, kind of had a couple of down years, lost his bat for a little bit, but he was back this season. He hasn't played since July 23rd, where he had an OPS of over 900, was leading a resurgence Brewers team that has been near the top of the league for basically the entire season, also near the top of our Sports by GSMC Podcast Network power rankings that we'll get into today as well. But he's been out for just about a month at this point, and he announced a couple days ago he's having surgery that will end his season. That's a blow to a Brewers team that, while they did lose some pitching, has been just as good, if not better, than years past. They lost Corbin Burnes to the Orioles, one of their top-line starting pitchers, which really had been their talent, really the thing that propels them forward. Offense had been struggling, but the insurgence of youth over there, as well as some old bats getting back together with the Brewers, really had started to turn their season, turn their offense around. It's been in the top half of the league, not the most potent, but it has been doing its thing, and it's been keeping them afloat in a tougher NL Central than a lot of people thought. This is a Brewers team that is going to make the playoffs, but not having Christian Yelich in there after the season that he has been having is a huge, huge loss for them. I think, and they've been surviving over this last month. They haven't been the greatest team since the All-Star break, but the Brewers have been pretty good. Taking a look at the All-Star, since the All-Star break, the Brewers in the month of April here, they're 14-10, so they're sitting over 500, sitting on top of their standings. Pretty comfortably ahead in the NL Central. Now, there aren't too many teams that are challenging them in the NL Central, but that doesn't mean that them being without their big little back bit. So even without Yelich, I like their odds as far as making a deep. I think that's where this hurts, especially the way he was hitting, going to kill them. Getting over Dodgers, who just a couple months ago lost Mookie Betts, one of the best players in the league, most dynamic bats, defenders. He comes back and immediately shows his impact. Homers already just a couple of games into his return. He is back, and that Dodgers lineup is scarier, is scary as it possibly can be right now. And I'm not even going to say that. This team can be even better. You get back to the 3 MVPs at the top of the lineup like they were having at the beginning of the season, and they have started to really get back on the grind here. They've just lost 2 in a row, but prior to that, they were right on fire, on track with some of the hottest teams in the league in their last 10, 6-4 in their last 10 currently. Adding Mookie Betts to that lineup, they don't need it. It's a wealth of riches, right? You already have Freddie Freeman, who returned after missing a couple games with the scare with his son. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani doing his thing, having a 30-30 season as a DH, which is ridiculous. He's going to win MVP most likely in the NL. But my God, this Dodgers team is ridiculous. They are only 20 games over 500, which saying only 20 games over 500 for any team is kind of crazy. But with the way that roster is stacked up and the way that it looks at most times during the year, is a little bit underwhelming. But they had to go through a lot of injuries, to their pitching staff as well, not just to Mookie Betts. They are supposed to get promising young rookie Yoshi Yamamoto back, who went out early on in the season. He's throwing a couple of simulated innings, two simulated innings in the coming weeks, and we might get him back for the playoffs, as well as Shohei Ohtani back on the bump as early as September. His arm wasn't supposed to be live until next season. You combine him with Glasnow, Yoshi Yamamoto, and Clayton Kershaw. If they can get another year or two out of him, that is 4 top end starters right there for a team that already has Walker Buehler. You add Walker Buehler to that list. Those are 5 guys that could be number 1s or number 2s in just about any other team if they can stay healthy. There is no weaknesses on this Dodgers squad. And we've been saying that forever. The injury bug has caught them and kind of has just stuck around with the Dodgers forever. But they've been just fine because they're the Dodgers. They've got everything they need and more, right? That's not even getting into the lineup that we talked a little bit about just a second ago. This Dodgers team is going to be great. The question is, can they turn it into playoff success? And that's been the issue. When we're looking around the rest of the MLB, we've got a couple of teams that are catching up to the Dodgers. Both the Padres and the Diamondbacks are just 2 games out of that division spot. They have not locked up that division, but it is well within the grasp of these of both of those teams, especially the way that they have been out of the break. The 2 hottest teams in baseball, both of them, since the All-Star break. No signs of slowing down. They're both 9-1 in their last 10, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our power rankings at the end of this at the end of this show here today. But excuse me. Those are all the injury updates. We're gonna take a deeper dive into a lot of these MLB teams later on in the show. But we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to take a look at what they did this offseason, give them an offseason grade, talk about their moves, good or bad, before talking about their upcoming season, giving them a record prediction under the new Jim Harbaugh tenure. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've just done a little bit of a deep dive around the world of baseball, talking about some of the injury updates, including Christian Yelich, Mookie Betts coming back, and Yoshi Yamamoto on an inevitable return for the playoffs for the Dodgers. We also talked a little bit about Drake Maye's preseason game. We talked about his ups and his down. He did get a rushing touchdown in a 1-point loss to the Philadelphia Eagles the other night. What that might mean as far as him being the starter in New England at the beginning of the season. In this segment, though, we are going to continue our coverage of the NFL, talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Chargers in our continuing series, going through all 32 NFL teams, taking a look at their offseason, giving them a grade, taking a look at their schedule, and giving them a record prediction. Before we get into that, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Los Angeles Chargers. Their offseason was one filled with turmoil, right? They end up firing their coach, Brandon Staley, after a disappointing 5-12 season filled with lots of downs, not too many ups, whether that be injury, bad coaching decisions, bad breaks. He gets fired midway through the season. They bring in legendary coach at both the college level and the NFL level, Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, who everywhere he goes has been extremely successful. This is probably, I won't say his hardest, but definitely his hardest NFL assignment. When he was with the 49ers, he immediately led them to success, goes back down to the college ranks after a couple of hugely successful seasons, and leads his alma mater Michigan, to a 15-0 perfect season, capping off a national championship win, bringing glory back to his former school. That's exactly what he came to do, and now he leaves. Now, the theory he leaves for a couple reasons, right? One of them, and most obviously, the fact that sanctions are coming his way in the NCAA. We've already seen one sanction fall down on him, and that was for just a recruiting violation, nothing to do with other stuff that could have happened during his tenure at Michigan. Flees to the NFL for that. The other thing is he accomplished his goal at Michigan, and the NFL has been trying to lure him back for at least the last 3 years. The Chargers are the team to finally do that. The Chargers are in an interesting spot, right? Because when the Chargers go in and they bring Jim Harbaugh in, it's a team that's half built for success and a team that is half in shambles. The half that's built for success, obviously, Justin Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion, definitely top 10, scratching the top 5 there for quarterbacks in the league. Justin Herbert is, and that is the hardest piece of the puzzle to get. So that's one check off the box right there for Jim Harbaugh, what he needs to do. He has a quarterback of the future. The question is the rest of the roster. It was extremely over the cap, and it was helped a little bit by both Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack taking a little bit of a pay cut to try and help rebuild this team, but they lose all of their offensive weapons for lack of sugarcoating it here, right? Keenan Allen, they can't re-sign. They trade him away to the Bears for pennies on the dollar. They release Mike Williams to stay under the cap. Austin Eckler walks in free agency, signs with Washington. This is a team that went from having one of the best skill position groups in the league, not to mention losing Gerald Everett as well, a really undervalued weapon at tight end, to having potentially the worst group of skill positions in the league. As far as wide receivers go, they're led by Josh Palmer, a guy that I personally am a big fan of. I love Josh Palmer. I love what he can do as a separator. We've seen him have really good success with this team. Quentin Johnson, who extremely disappointing rookie season, but that doesn't mean he can't turn it around. You draft Lad McConkey, Brendan Rice as well, 2 rookies there. This is a Chargers team that is not really set up very well as far as their depth chart goes. When it comes to running backs, it's interesting because they replace Austin Eckler with a couple of rookies, but as well as a couple of former Baltimore running backs in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Right now, Gus Edwards is listed as the starter on the depth chart, which, I mean, he's fine, but he doesn't do anything special, especially in the pass game. And we know that Jim Harbaugh loves to run the ball. That's what he does everywhere. Frank Gore in San Francisco. Obviously, the whole thing in Michigan. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Wherever he goes, that's his philosophy. Hard-nosed football, win the game. Defense and the running game, right? And the Chargers need a lot of work. I'm not gonna sit here and say that they figured it out, right? The Chargers need a lot of work to get to the spot where they want to be in the future, right? This is a Chargers team that lost boatloads of talents over the offseason. So where do they start? Obviously, bringing in Jim Harbaugh is the big move of the offseason. But also with the draft, they had the fifth overall pick in this draft. They end up picking Joe Alt, probably the best offensive lineman in this class, a guy that I was really high on heading into it. But they end up drafting Joe Alt with the fifth overall pick out of Notre Dame. He's a transcendent offensive line talent. He should immediately shore up that offensive line. Paired with Rashawn Slater, who they got just a couple drafts ago. Troy Pipkins looked pretty solid. Wasn't the greatest, but this offensive line, especially at the tackles, should be a really, really important part of this Chargers run game, right? Then they go out and fix receiver. They pick up Lad McConkey. They pick up Brendan Rice in the 7th round. They draft linebacker Junior Colson out of Michigan, as well as defensive lineman Justin Ibogibi out of Alabama. Those are 2 guys that should have immediate impacts on a defense that isn't really that built up, right? Outside of, your edge rushers in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and Derwin James at safety, there isn't anyone out there on this roster that I go down and I look at, hey, he's going to be a huge part of a great defensive unit. Now, Derwin James is a great piece. He has not been able to stay healthy. And they lost a lot of their cornerback upside there. One of their big free agent signings was Kristen Fulton. Kristen Fulton, who isn't one of those elite corners, but is a piece of much needed depth for this team. This defense is going to be bad. It's not going to be a very good defense. There's really no way of putting it otherwise. If they can get some pressure off the edge, maybe they can make it easier on their corners, but I do expect this defense to not be very good. And that's not going to be good with the play style of a Jim Harbaugh, because Jim Harbaugh, like we talked about, likes to run the ball. Now, he does have Justin Herbert, so he can pass the ball when needed. That's not going to be an issue, but it's not his philosophy. Running the ball takes a lot of clock, and when you have a bad defense and you need the clock for shootouts, it's not a great situation to be in. So I'm not too excited about this Chargers offseason, but it's not really their fault. They got put in this position because they thought they were in a championship window and they had bad injury luck and nothing really worked out. So it's a full rebuild. They went 5-12 last year. They bring in a new coach, a much better coach, an established coach, someone that we know can be that guy. We'll see how much of a difference that is going to make. I'm going to give the Chargers a D+. Again, they just lost so much talent. And I understand it's not their fault, but bringing in Jim Harbaugh should bring a quick rebuild with him. He's going to bring not just, the ability, not just a competent coaching staff, but the ability to bring in free agents because he has that reputation that guys will want to play for. So that should help them in recruiting or signing free agents in the future. But anyway, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to go over all 18 weeks, all 17 games of the Los Angeles Chargers schedule, give them a record prediction, see if they can beat out that 5-12 record from last season. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the Los Angeles Chargers offseason. A disappointing offseason, but one where you can see the light. They brought in new head coach Jim Harbaugh. I did give them a D+ just because they lost so much talent, unfortunately. And the draft outside of Joe Alt, which was a slam dunk of a pick, didn't really move me that much. In this segment, we're going to go over the Chargers' schedule, all 18 weeks, all 17 games, give them a record prediction, see if they can improve on the 5-12 record from last year, and maybe make the playoffs. We'll see about that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat option. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Los Angeles Chargers schedule prediction. Like we talked about with the Chiefs, this is going to be a slightly harder schedule for everyone else in the division outside of the Chiefs. The Chiefs, just first of all, got better. Second of all, they have to play the AFC North. Not an easy division to play at all. But if there is a team that I think can do it, it's going to be in this division. If there's a team out, the Broncos, Raiders, and Chargers, that I think can put up the biggest fight, I think it might be the Chargers. Now, that's not to say that they're going to come second in that division. I just think they have the highest ceiling, mostly because of Justin Herbert. Now, we're going to put their ceiling we're going to put their range of wins at the end here. But this is a team that has upside. This is a team that could surprise people. I don't think they will, but this is a team that has some upside here. They have an earlier bye week, week 5. That's the first bye week you possibly can. And, bye week does matter when you're talking about a team, especially a team on any of the coasts that has to travel a lot. It's important to have a good bye week time. But for a team that isn't expected to do much, this shouldn't matter that badly. Excuse me. Sorry about that. The Chargers here start off their campaign week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders at home in LA. I think the Chargers win this game. New head coach. Generally, you win your first game with a new head coach. I know that isn't always how it happens, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to light a fire under these guys, and I believe in their ability to win week 1 against the Raiders, a tough division matchup for him. Week 2 against the Panthers on the road. And this is one where I think really could go either way. I gave the Panthers a win on this one. I think the Panthers, their first home game of the season, I think is something that they're going to come out and just have more energy than the Chargers are, and they're going to win this game. Then they get a tough defense week 3 against the Steelers. They play on the road in Pittsburgh. I think that defense is going to be too much for them, although I do think that this is, again, going to be a close game. I think the Chargers are going to be one of those teams that just plays a bunch of really, really tight games all season long. Week 4 against the Chiefs. They're going to lose that one. I think the Chiefs are going to dominate the division. That's not a pattern that's going to stop this season, I don't think. Then they get a bye. 1-3 entering the bye in week 5. They take on the Broncos on the road. And the Broncos are a team that I'm very low on, but this is a division matchup. It is in Denver, and because of that, I'm going to give the Broncos a win. They fall to 1-4. Week 7 against the Arizona Cardinals. Again, this is a matchup that I really do think could go either way. I'm giving this one to the Cardinals, though. The Chargers fall to 1-5. Then they take on the Saints. Yet again, another matchup that could go either way here. I am giving this to Derek Carr and the Saints. They once again fall to 1-6. Halfway through the season here, 1-6 on the year. Not a great spot to be in, but it's not super surprising. Then they take on the Browns, another tough defense. And I think this defense is going to be too much for that offensive line to handle. The Browns win this game as well. Chargers fall to 1-7. It's a 7-game losing streak for them with a bye sandwiched in between. They take on the Titans, another team that I think could go either way. You're sensing a pattern here. This is a Chargers team that I think if they come out with enough energy could win probably half of the games that they lose. But I'm giving this game to the Titans as well. So an 8-game losing streak here as we head into week 11 against the Bengals. They're 1-8 on the season. Not a good spot to be in. I do think they beat the Bengals, though. This is a team that could surprise anybody. I don't think there's a single game on the schedule. Maybe a couple. There's only a handful of games on their schedule that I don't think they have a shot in the dark in. And one of those is coming up against the Ravens. This is a Ravens team that's going to play a similar style of football. It's going to be a battle of the Harbaugh brothers. This should be a fun game to watch. I am giving this one to the Ravens, though. Then they take on the Falcons in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins and that revamped defense that they just got, I'm giving this one to the Falcons here today. I am giving the Chargers a win against the Falcons, though. So like I said, this is one that could go either way. I was looking ahead to the next game against the Chiefs, which on the road in Arrowhead, end of the season, I don't see them winning that game at all. Then they get the Buccaneers at home. I think they do win this game. The Buccaneers are one of those teams that I think could be a very similar level to the Chargers as far as skill level here, but that's besides the point. They get the Broncos in week 16, at home. They win this one. They're not getting swept by the Denver Broncos this season. Then they get the Patriots on the road in week 17. And I think Drake Maye will take care of business, win a game at home against the Chargers before closing off the season against the Raiders in Vegas. They need this one. They're going to get this one. They finish out at 6-11. Now, we kind of rushed through this schedule here a little bit because I wanted to talk a little bit about how this is kind of a low estimation of them. There are a bunch of games that could go 50-50. I think this is a team that could go anywhere from 6-11 to all the way at their ceiling being like 10-7. This is a team that could compete for the playoffs if a bunch of the breaks fall their way. That's not to say that it's going to be easy for them. It's going to be very tough for them to get to that 10-7 mark, but it is possible. They have a great coaching staff. They have a great quarterback, and that is 2/3 of what you need to win NFL games right there. I do think that this is a team that's going to need just another year to get their bearing straight, get it figured out as far as being a serious playoff contender. But after this season, I do think they will be in the running for a playoff spot. So I have them at 6-11, but that could very, very easily change in just a couple of games. Like I said, I think I could very easily see this team going 8-9, 9-8, as opposed to 6-11. But 10 wins, I think, is something that is. I think 10 wins is even possible here. But I don't have them making the playoffs. I think they lose the tiebreaker out anyway, even if they get to those 10 wins. But we'll see what happens with the Chargers. Their season is going to be very unpredictable, I think. I think they're going to be like the Vikings of the last couple seasons, playing a million close games. I'm not sure if they're going to get the breaks, though, because the Chargers tend not to get the breaks in close games. But we'll see if Jim Harbaugh can change that. But anyway, let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, it is time for our world-famous MLB Power Rankings, the official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network MLB Power Rankings. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over everything that you need to know about the Los Angeles Chargers heading into next season. The Chargers, I gave a 6-11 record, although that is something that could very easily be flip-flopped because this is not the toughest schedule, but I think it's going to be a lot of close games for them. We also gave them a D+ for their offseason, as well as going over some injuries in the MLB that are getting resolved or out for the year here. And we talked about Drake Maye's second appearance in the NFL, his first long-term role as a quarterback, though. In this segment, we're going to finish off our show with our world-famous MLB Power Rankings. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, leave a tip or donation through the super chat option. If you do either of those things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the MLB Power Rankings. It has been a week, and quite what a week it has been since we last did it in the MLB. It has been a crazy amount of change. Obviously, we see some movement around at the top. The bottom looks pretty similar, but we're going to run through it anyway. The White Sox get a massive 12-2 victory over the Yankees this week. It's not enough to move them off of 30. They're the only team, the Yankees are now, to lose by 10+ runs to this year's White Sox team. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop them from being historically bad. They sit still at the basement at number 30. The Marlins and the Rockies continue to sit at the 29 and 28 spot. Not much has changed there. The Athletics threatened to jump up a spot, but I couldn't move them over the Angels. The Athletics stay at 27. The Angels stay at 26. Tigers at 25 here. They have probably the AL Cy Young winner in Tariq Skubal. Not a good team, but next year, watch out for them. They could be really, really solid. At 24, the Washington Nationals. My Washington Nationals here, it's been bad. They just gave up a cycle to the Phillies, got killed by them, but it's all right. Next season, they'll be even better. The Blue Jays continue to sit at 23 here. They have not been. They've been pretty much 500 this whole time, right? Not much has changed in their situation. Although technically, no one's been eliminated from the playoffs yet. So all these teams still have a shot at it. We also at 22, we have the Cubs and the Reds, both of them who are climbing up in the rankings. They moved up ahead of the Pirates here, who I do still have at 20. The Pirates have been struggling a lot recently. At 19, the Rangers, the defending champions, they're running out of time to turn it around. They're out of the playoff race, 10 games back of the Houston Astros, who sit 3 games up on the Mariners for the division lead. They only have a 0.5% chance of making the playoffs, according to ESPN, and they just have not been able to hit that switch, turn it around. But they could still technically do it. The Rays at 18, the Giants at 17, and the Cardinals at 16. Not much has changed there with those teams. They're still on their slight upward trajectory, although the Cardinals are starting to slip a bit. At 15, we have the Red Sox. They are sitting here. They've got a lot of promise. They really do. But, the whole situation with Jarren Duran, he gets suspended for 2 games. The Red Sox stay at 15. The Braves, I thought about moving up a little bit, but they just have been so average. We've seen a couple of really hot teams, and almost everyone else has been just about average right now. So we're gonna keep the Braves where they are for now, even though they are above the Mets. Here in sorry about that. Here, as we get up to those Mets, they fall a couple more spots. Their hot streak is starting to falter. I wonder if they're going to be able to limp into the playoffs here. The Mariners move up a spot to number 12. They're 3 games back of the Astros, who are at 10 right now, right ahead of the Royals. But the Mariners, they're starting to get their bats going just a little bit. Just a little bit. They just lost 3 in a row. Not what they wanted, but they killed the Mets. So, we're starting to see the turnaround. The Royals, they're scratching and clawing their way at the playoffs. It's going to be tight there. They're behind the Twins now. The Twins and the Guardians, who played a tight series. That saw the Twins almost catch up to the Guardians, but they were able to stave that off. Here, as we hit the top 10, the Astros sit pretty convincingly of the Mariners. Now, 3 games isn't something that's uncomebackable from, but the Astros sitting at number 10 here. It's crazy how quick they were able to come all the way back, and they're back all the way up at the top of the league again. The Twins at 9, they had a tough weekend series against the Guardians, but they're hanging tough, still in there with a team that has been almost uncatchable all season long. The Brewers at 8, they lose Christian Yelich, but he's been out for a month. They fall because the 2 hottest teams in baseball, the Diamondbacks and the Padres, they need to move up. The Diamondbacks and the Padres, both 9-1 in their last 10 games. Both of them have been the hottest teams in baseball since the All-Star break. They have come in and put a chokehold on the NL wild card race. They sit here at numbers 7 and 6 so far, really taking a lead over the Braves, who sit just 2 games up on the Mets for that final wild card spot. At number 5, we're back to our top 5. The Phillies fall a spot. They just had a great game, but we had to move everybody down one spot. The Guardians, the Orioles, and the Yankees, who Aaron Judge just hit his 300th career home run for, fastest ever to do it. For the Dodgers, who get back Mookie Betts. And my goodness, is it crazy how great this team is. This team is stacked. This team is loaded. There is no other way to put it. This team is insane to watch, and I'm scared for the rest of the NL, honestly. I thought this year the Dodgers wouldn't get it done. They'd have to wait till next year, but I'm not sure about that anymore. We've had a couple of top contenders really get hit with some bad injury luck this season, and some are slowing down the stretch. So we'll see what happens as we hit the playoffs coming up soon. But let me know what you think. We'll do some more power rankings next week. We'll see what else changes around the world of baseball. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday talking about some more NFL preseason action, as well as any other stories that break over the weekend. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to the show. I'll see you then. You all have a good one. See you on Monday. Bye-bye.